we'll get started here in just a bit. Nick is going to walk through the reviser's piece, very similar to what Andy did for us yesterday. And Nick will walk through it today. And just so everybody knows is that today we introduced an RS into Ways and Means to create a Senate bill version of House Bill 2410. Tamara is downstairs finishing up. We're going to try to read it in tonight. And we're going to keep the mics open on the Senate floor. We'll try to read it in tonight. And then we can start having testimony and so forth Thursday and Friday. Depending on how it goes, what the committee wants to do and leadership wants to do. I'm not opposed to, if we're close and everybody's comfortable, I'm not opposed to working the bill Saturday so we can try to catch up with the House. Just throwing that out there to see how the testimony goes and how the committee feels as we go through that process. And at the end of today, we can go through some of the changes that we put in the Senate version just to give you a head start since we're trying to catch up. Senator Petty.
I'm just, I know I've made some contacts with my school districts, and in some cases, you know, Thursday and Friday, it may not be every school district in the state, but many are, this is the end of their school year, and so you have last day of students, last day of staff, and it makes it very hard for people to be available to testify at the end of this week. And so I'm just laying that out there and concerned about possibility of maybe having testimony on Monday.
The longer we go, the more chance it is that we come back into June. So, we'll let the process take its course. And if we can get, if we're ready and the committee is comfortable with going Saturday, then we'll go. If the committee is not, then we'll pause and we'll just do what the process dictates. Senator Hensley?
I'm fine with Saturday because I live here. So let me commend you, Mr. Chairman, for proposing the public hearings. I think that is a very good move on your part because this 2410 now has been out for a few days, and it allows the education community to have the opportunity to come in and make comments as to what they see in this bill or what they like or what they don't like. And so I think you've made a very good step forward here in allowing for public testimony. And I greatly appreciate it.
Senator Baumgartner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want my fellow senators to know, and for those that are here today, that my office did send out via Amy, who has been the assistant for the Senate Education Committee and is also our assistant for this special committee, but she did send out an email notification to all superintendents, all school districts, other folks that during the legislative session had requested to be on that information list if we had upcoming hearings. And so they do know when we are having our meetings for tomorrow and on Friday. And they also received the form so that they can sign up to either be here and speak in person or to submit written. So they did get that information as we had requested.
In the committee, Scott is on the side here, so if you need any questions from any LPA audits, he's available as well. And I'm sure Eddie's here someplace.
Yes.
And then Jeff King, counsel, is on the other table. So we'll go ahead and let Nick kick us off. And then if he's going over something that I know has been changed in the Senate version, I'll let you guys know as we go as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. In front of you, you will have a little comparison table that the revisor's office prepared up to kind of compare this SDF QPA as of January 1, 2015 current version of the bill, House Bill 2410. So as that sits right now, and I also passed out to each one of you House Bill 2410, the copy that was printed today, so that for everyone to know, that's not the bill that the Senate introduced, that's the House Bill 2410 that I passed out to you. So starting off on this chart, and a lot of this Eddie discussed yesterday, this might just be an easier way for you to look at it, kind of a comparison way. Starting off with some of the differences between SDF QPA and House Bill 2410 as it stands right now. Enrollment counts. Enrollment counts are based on the preceding school year now. Prior in the SDF QPA, it was the current school year. The declining enrollment provision where you can look back a year and count, use that year's count, still stands. And the military adjustment and the disaster adjustments in enrollment count still exist in House Bill 2410. In the definition of what a student is, this is a change to how kindergarten is counted. Under the bill, kindergarten is counted at 1 FTE. In the SDF QPA, it was counted at 0.5. This does not require students to attend kindergarten. This just counts them at 1 FTE, or the equivalent thereof if they do attend kindergarten. The base state aid per pupil, or base state aid per student amount has changed in House Bill 2410. Previously, under the SDF QPA, it was $3,838. Under House Bill 2410, the next year it will be $4,006 for school year 17-18, and then $4,128 for school year 18-19. And then after that, as you all know, it will be based on the CPI for the years after those.
Can I stop for just a second? One of the changes that we put in the Senate bill is that the House 2410 version just had the prior year CPI number as the index. In the last 6 years, because of the recessionary environment, there were 2 negative years. So the Senate position will be that we're going to smooth out that CPI. We're going to use a 3-year rolling average to eliminate the negatives and smooth that CPI out.
Moving on, in the chart, the transportation weighting has been changed slightly. The House Committee changed the mathematical calculation of the weighting, and we can kind of get into detail if you would like, but another major change is the grandfather clause that you all are aware of, where districts can choose to use the 2016 or 2017 or school year 2016-17 transportation weighting, or they can use the current weighting that's in the bill, and that goes through school year 2021 to 2022. And then thereafter, after school year beginning July 1, 2022, they would have to use the transportation weighting that exists in House Bill 2410. Flipping over to the next page, under the...
If I could interrupt you again.
Yes.
Is this where we changed the grandfather from 5 years to 2 years?
I believe, yes.
So on that 5-year clause, the courts are frowning on any kind of hold harmless more than a year or 2 out. So we took the position that we would just change that from a 5-year grandfather to a 2-year.
So under the bill, they will be able to choose to use for the next 2 school years, 2017-2018 and 2018-2019, the weighting as it was previously calculated this current year, or the weighting as it exists under House Bill 2410. Getting into the enrollment weightings, under the SDF QPA, we have the low enrollment weighting and the high enrollment weighting. The House Committee changed that and kind of combined both of those weightings into what is known as just an enrollment weighting. And There's no change in the calculations to those weightings. They both really still exist in that one section. Just the math was, I guess you could say, simplified to have those weightings in there. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions on that if you had them. But yeah, the current enrollment weighting is the exact same as the high and low enrollment weightings.
Nick, this is another change I believe we have proposed, is that we want to stick to the original description of low and high enrollment. They changed the description probably to have the courts look at something else, since they frowned on the way it's never been reasonably calculated. So we changed it back to the original description. The math is the same. There's going to be I don't know if it's called a proviso, or there's going to be language that Chairman Baumgartner's committee will look at this weighting in her committee next year, along with input from LPA, and I think Senator Boyer has a sparsity approach that she wants to compare to this. So the Senate version will have that language in that this particular weighting will be vetted next year in Senator Baumgartner's committee with sparsity and the LPA input. Senator Petty?
Thank you. I just want, so you're saying in the Senate version that was, was written, we went back to the original description for the weightings, and there's a commitment that we're going to have hearings next year. It's not so much in the bill, is it?
We were thinking that the language will be in the bill, that we will have a hearing, if that's the way I understood our conversation this morning.
And that certainly is feasible and something we could just put in and sunset after a year or something like that.
We just want to make a commitment that we are going to look at that particular weighting.
Committee on the next item on the chart is the bilingual weighting. Previously, under the SDF QPA, the weighting was set at 0.395. Under House Bill 2410, and as we discussed yesterday, the weighting is kind of an option of two things. You can either use kind of contact hours by a weighting of 0.361, or a head count in bilingual programs times 0.185. The at-risk student weighting, again, at-risk for funding purposes is students who are eligible for free meals, and previously under the SDF QPA, the weighting was set at 0.456. Under the bill, as it stands now, House Bill 2410, the same free lunch identifier applies, but the weighting has been moved to 0.484. And then there's a provision in the bill, House Bill 2410, that says that every school district has to have a minimum, or will be counted as having a minimum of 10% at-risk student, an at-risk student population. But that weighting in the bill for that provision is still at 0.456.
Nick, if I can stop again. The Senate version, we put that at-risk student back to 0.456. And we'll discuss that in committee. Obviously, it was tied to our reasonably calculated base that Eddie did for us a week or so ago. So we wanted to put it back just so our reasonable calculated base makes sense. And I'm sure we'll be open for discussion, but it is back to 0.456. Senator Hensel?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the House bill provides for a weighting of 484, which is what the LPA, the Legislative Post-Audit Report, had recommended.
I believe
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'll make sure to double check and verify that, but I believe that's correct. Okay, committee, the next item on the chart is the high-density at-risk student weighting. That is under the SDF QPA. There's a determination using a linear transition from 35 to 50% at-risk student enrollment, and then districts with more than 50% at-risk student enrollment had a different weighting. And under this bill, that is the exact same as what was under prior law. Next item on the chart is the career technical education weighting. This weighting is statutorily set, or was statutorily set under the SDF QPA at 0.5. That remains the weighting in House Bill 2410. Just for next year, though. That weighting will expire, that provision will expire after July 1, 2018. But the bill does provide that the Department of Education is to provide a cost study to be performed on the CTE weighting. I think we had some discussion on that yesterday. The school facilities weighting is basically the same as it was under the SDF QPA, except this weighting is limited to bond obligations that were approved prior to July 1, 2015. So that's kind of just a minor change there. The special education weighting is the same as it was under the SDF QPA. It's just determined by dividing special education payments by the base daily per pupil amount. The ancillary school facilities weighting, again, is the same as it was under the SDF QPA. The cost of living weighting is no longer included under House Bill 2410. It was provided for the SDF QPA, but the House Committee essentially replaced the cost of living weighting with the local excellence budget. And we will get into that here shortly.
Can I stop again? The Senate version will eliminate that provision and go back to just the COLA. It was budget neutral and just makes something more complicated. It doesn't need to be. So for the Senate committee bill, we went back to just the COLA and eliminated this section altogether. And then I don't know if we've talked about LOB, but the LOB was changed to something called the local foundation budget. And everybody knows it as LOB, so we changed it back, just so we don't have to learn a new language.
And we'll get to that part of the chart here shortly. Let's see. To declining enrollment weighting under the SDF QPA, it's basically the same except for school year 17-18. The weighting is reduced by half. So it's kind of the same calculation, but the weighting is reduced by half. And then this declining enrollment weighting will expire on July 1, 2018 under House Bill 2410. For virtual school state aid purposes, this is a little different. What I have in the chart isn't what was provided for under the SDF QPA. This is how it was last year in the box on the left-hand side. And this bill, House Bill 2410, continues what we did last year, what the legislature did last year for funding purposes. So full-time student is $5,000, part-time students $1,700, and then adult students are $709. The statewide property tax levy, the 20 mil levy, is continued in this bill. And there were no changes made to that by the House Committee.
Thanks, Nick. The Senate committee bill will reinstate the original Senate position when it left Senate tax. And that is to say, on the 20 mills, we will prohibit the locals abating the 20 mills for IRB and IDX, local economic development projects. So the Senate bill coming over has that Senate position back in. Then we'll talk about the capital outlay as well. The capital outlay mills right now is 8. The Senate position will be to increase it by, the committee bill, not the Senate position, the committee bill will be increasing the capital outlay to 10 mills, and also prohibit locals from abating at IDX, IRB, and TIF. Senator Hensley?
And Nick, to be clear about this, the House bill also includes the $20,000 homestead exemption from the 20 mills.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Because that was also contained in Senate Bill 146. So, all right, thanks.
Going on to the third box down, the optional local tax levy. This is where the local option budget, local foundation budget is. Previously, it was called the local option budget under the SDF QPA, and that was districts could go up to 33% of the district's state financial aid. Anything above 30%, a district was required to hold an election to go above that. There was an artificial base amount provided at $4,490. Equalization was provided at the 81.2 percentile, and in that equalization formula, it was based on the assessed valuation per pupil, and that under prior law, under the SDF QPA, that was based on the immediately preceding school year. Some of the changes, basically it's very similar. The name obviously has changed to local foundation budget. Schools can still go up to 33% of the district's state financial aid. Now, as we discussed yesterday, no election is required to go up to 33% or to go above 30%. The artificial base still is there. It is still equalized at the amount that we equalized last year during special session. And the kind of one change in the equalization formula is for next year, for school year 17-18, the assessed valuation per pupil is based on the immediately preceding school year. So that's the same as prior SDF QPA law. But then after that year, the assessed valuation per pupil will be based on the immediately preceding, or the 3 immediately preceding school years.
Thanks, Nick. And the change in the Senate committee bill is the artificial base of 4490 has been married up to the index as well. So not only will the base be indexed, but this artificial base will be indexed as well in the bill. Senator Hensley?
I have a question for Scott. Scott, on the ABPD, don't we have a post-audit study of that? I think the committee approved that last meeting, didn't it? Remind me what that study encompasses, if you would, please, because post-audit's looking at that.
Scott,
And I think the request came from Representative Campbell, actually.
make sure you state your name because Jeff King's going in the record.
Scott Frank, Legislative Post Auditor. Yes, at the last Post Audit Committee meeting, they approved a request to take a look at the use of assessed valuation per pupil as the measurement for property wealth, poverty for equalization purposes. We'll be taking a look at it, look at some different options that might be used instead of assessed valuation per pupil and report back. That audit will not begin until after New Year, so we'll probably won't have results until next spring. Thank you.
The SDF QPA did not have a local excellence budget. House Bill 2410 provides for a local excellence budget, and as we discussed yesterday, it is determined based on the district's non-at-risk student enrollment multiplied by 0.456, and this is a local levy that is then equalized using the capital outlay equalization formula, but with kind of some different valuation factors, which are the assessed valuation per student and also the appraised value of single-family homes in the district. And then there's a purpose statement included with the local excellence budget to provide funds to provide educational opportunities that exceed the row standards.
Think on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, was this the calculation that had some kind of root square or square root calculation?
There is a square root.
So we eliminated it because I couldn't calculate that. So I believe we're gonna rip this out of the bill.
So the next item on the chart is the change to capital outlay. As you see in the chart, SDF QPA and current law, the Class Act authorizes, let's see, 8 different uses for capital outlay funds. House Bill 2410 added that utility expenses can also be used for capital outlay funds. And that will just be number 9 in that list to the left of there.
And the committee, another change coming in the Senate committee bill is we're going to give authority to add property casualty insurance into the capital outlay, in addition to going from 8 mils to 10 mils. The other piece of language that Nick is working on, that is to say, if you bought a computer through your capital outlay, anything attached to keeping the computer working, that is to say, software upgrades, maintenance, repair, paint touch-up, whatever was required to keep that asset that you ran through your capital outlay productive will be allowed under the capital outlay authority. There's been some confusion about buying a piece of capital outlay equipment and then not being able to keep it maintained. So we're moving everything into the capital outlay. We're going to put a big umbrella over everything that's purchased through there. Senator Hensley?
Mr. Chairman, when you say the Senate version will increase from 8 mils to 10 mils, I'm presuming that will also be equalized.
Yes, everything is going to be equalized. I think we learned that lesson the hard
Last
way.
year. Thanks.
Then, in the bill, in section 47 of the bill, we have the LPA studies that House Bill 2410 will implement should it go into effect as it is right now. Prior law provided that the LPA would conduct an efficiency study of a large, medium, and small school district each year. House Bill 2410 repeals that and requires certain performance audits on, and as you can see in the list, transportation services funding, and that's the first audit that will be conducted in 2018, at-risk education funding for 2020, bilingual education funding for 2023, virtual school programs of other states, kind of looking at that for fiscal year 2024, then the cost of providing educational opportunities to every student, and that will be done 3 times in 2019, 2022, and 2025. And then LPA will also look at the best practices in successful schools for twice, 2021 and 2026.
Senator McGinn?
I'm just trying to, looking at that list, transportation services that we'd audit, at-risk we'd audit, bilingual, and then virtual school programs of other states. I mean, why did we not do at-risk at other states, bilingual at other states, cost? I mean, what was the reasoning for that?
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure on I don't want to speak to the intent of why these ones were chosen. I can speak to the virtual school programs of other states was an amendment that was added by the House committee. And what that amendment did was it took out an audit where the LPA would be doing an audit on career technical education, a kind of a study of career technical education, and what the committee, I think, The intent is that the CTE audit that LPA was going to be doing in conjunction with the cost study that the department was going to be doing next year of CTE program weightings kind of overlapped. So the committee decided to replace that LPA audit with this virtual school programs in other states.
So why don't we do
Yes.
virtual school programs of our state? It is just not consistent to me.
Yeah, let me look at the
Everything
language.
is about
I
our state except for one.
think it might include somewhat of our states. Let me look at the language, the specific language of that addition.
I think LPA can do it.
So again, so the study that was added by the House Committee on Virtual Schools is looking at a specific type of model in other states, looking at a statewide virtual school program. I know Florida is one of the states that has that, and so the interest was to have us look at other states that have statewide programs, which would complement an audit we did a couple of years ago that looked internally at the virtual schools the state already runs and what those might cost. So that was kind of the rationale that they had when they added that study in.
Okay, well, again, and maybe we'll learn more when we start working the bill, but, so, why don't we look at at-risk education as how other states do it? It seems like we're just picking one item out, and then I hear it's possibly overlapping with the CTE study. Is that correct?
There was, prior to this virtual school study being put in, there was a study that had to look at a prior version of the bill, but LPA was going to be conducting a study of career tech ed funding in the state. And I think the committee discussion went down the road that was duplicative of the.
So we are or are not doing a study of the CTE, because I thought I saw back here where
Yes,
we have to do a study.
I'm sorry if
We're
that.
not going to continue the funding.
I'm sorry if I caused any confusion with that. The LPA will not be doing that CTE study that was provided previously under the bill. The department, next year, the CTE weighting is going to be sunsetted. So next year, the CTE weighting is 0.5, and the department is going to be conducting a study of the CTE weighting and CTE costs to come back to the legislature and provide that information. I guess to theoretically update the weighting or make changes to the weighting.
So on the CTE, we're going to sunset it, and based on the department doing some further cost studies. But we're going to continue virtual schools of other states and not sunset it. So anyway, we'll have this conversation, but I think there's some inconsistency of who uses what program.
Senator Baumgartner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think just to follow up on that, if we look at, when we're looking at this list of LPA studies, and let's just focus on virtual school programs and comparing it to other states, what we're essentially saying is we're not going to compare our program to other states for another 2, 4, 6, 8 years. And so any kid that's in 4th grade right now, so our students from 4th grade on up, they're going to be in that same virtual program that we're offering right now until we get around in 2024, 2025 to make a comparison. And I think that really drives home the notion that we do need to have some robust hearing on the virtual program, because we know some districts that are offering broad virtual programs have more than 50% of their students that are at-risk students and academically lagging, and so as well as being qualified for special education. So for us to continue to have no at-risk money going for those virtual students, we need to be looking at the program really kind of in depth sooner rather than later.
And committee, I'd just like to draw your attention in the bill that I passed out to you, that language of that virtual school study is on page 54 at the very bottom of page 54, and then continues over to the top of page 55. So you can look at that specific language and go from there. Okay, committee, to finish up the chart, there was a change made by in House Bill 2410 to the kind of prior language that was used for accreditation. Previous law, as you can see in the chart, says that the State Board of Education is required to design and adopt an accreditation system based on improvement in performance that reflects high academic standards. And what the committee decided to do is take out the word academic and replace that sentence, kind of change that sentence to say that the State Board of Education is required to design and adopt an accreditation system based on improvement in performance that reflects the educational goal set forth in ASA 721127C or the ROSE capacities. The bill also requires that the State Board has to submit a report to the governor and the legislature on the school district accreditation system.
Senator Boyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Nick, and because I haven't read it yet, I don't know. In this report back out, will it include any schools that would be noticed or challenged in their accreditation, or is it just the process?
So what the sentence says is that on or before January 15, 2018, and this is, if you want to follow along, I'm on page 52 of the bill in new section 45, subsection A, kind of the last sentence there. On or before January 15, 2018, and each January 15 thereafter, the State Board shall prepare and submit a report on the school district's accreditation system to the governor and the legislatures. And I have to look to see if that was,
The intent.
well, also if that was also required in the prior law, but I'm not sure on that. I need to double check.
All right,
But that's what the statement says.
thank you.
And then committee, some additional policies that House Bill 2410 does. After July 1, 2018, the bill would require school districts to provide applied behavioral analysis therapy or ABA therapy for autistic students upon the request of a parent or legal guardian if it was ordered by a licensed physician, psychologist, or specialist. So that is delayed until July 1, 2018. But it's there. Another additional policy is that another additional policy is that there are some changes to the tax credit scholarship program. I don't have that in this chart. We discussed those a little bit yesterday. I'd be happy to get into kind of the differences, but since that wasn't really part of the SDF QPA, it wasn't included or kind of part of the finance formula under the SDF QPA. I didn't include that in this chart, but I'd be happy to discuss those. And maybe I'd be happy to try to answer any further questions that you have.
Another change that's coming over in the Senate committee bill is another change that's coming over in the Senate committee bill is we eliminated all of the section on autism that we just went over. We eliminated it as well as the funding for it.
Committee, I want to also add, I'm sorry, I skipped over a bullet point here. Section 46, the very last bullet point, the House committee added a provision that would require the Department of Education to submit a report on each school district, kind of a funding report for each school district. And you can look at section 46 of the bill beginning on page 53, and see what is included, what would be required to be provided in that report.
Senator Hensley?
Mr. Chairman, Amy was able to send us a letter from the Department of Education with regard to the autism provision, wherein the attorney says that that particular provision would be inconsistent with the ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court, because it would require a instructional methodology without approval of the educators who would be involved with the child's IEP. So I think it's wise that we follow the department's advice in this case, and I commend you for reviewing that provision.
Thank you. Senator Baumgartner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question, and that has to do with the additional funding for the 4-year-old at-risk preschool. For some reason, I thought that the House bill, the substitute for House Bill 2410, had $2 million for next year and an additional $2 million for the following year. Is that correct?
I believe it is, and this chart does not get into the appropriation sections.
Okay.
But yes, we would be happy to update this chart, put together a little something to kind of show the differences that were made to the appropriation section of this.
And I think that's the point of clarification. That really wasn't tethered to anything particular as far as policy. It was just to assign additional funding to that particular area for only 2 years. Is that right?
I'm going to look at any. This one.
The bill has $2 million for each of those 2 years for that. The plan was generally described as a 5-year plan that would have added $2 million for each of those 5 years. However, since that is just in the appropriations provision, and since the legislature only appropriates 2 years at a time, years 3, 4, and 5 would have to be done by a future legislature.
But again, it is not tethered to anything particularly from a policy standpoint. Is that correct?
I wasn't sure if that was directed at Nick or myself, but yes, that it's additional money going to that program in the appropriation. There's no change in the policy of that program.
Senator Boyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it appropriate at this time to ask Senator King a question about that program?
Yes, all the staff here that's here to help today, they're all available for questions, so everybody's on deck today.
And I ask it now instead of later because I think I would like this in the record just for clarification. Our current 4-year-old at-risk program, what I understand from Mr. Dennis when I talked to him, is essentially a grant program.
And that's my understanding.
And when I pursued the question of if we're adding money in, how we determine where that money will go. And the answer is a special committee would be evaluating and distributing the money just as they had done with the current money. But the question I have is, one of the limitations in actually giving that money out has to do with schools if they have room for a program, correct? They may not have space to have one. So my question was, from a legal perspective, if we're putting in money for something we think needs to happen and potentially anyone should have access to that, but it's limited by a space issue, so they wouldn't actually be eligible, is that a problem? Do we need to address that some way? Help me.
I don't think it is, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy to describe it. I think it goes back to one thing we discussed last week when I addressed the committee. From at least generally speaking, you seem to be talking more about an equity issue than an adequacy issue. How the court addresses equity isn't like how you and I having dinner would address equity, or even an equal protection analysis under the law. They're really looking at, I would call it bang for the buck, reasonably equal financing opportunities for a reasonably equal tax effort. What you described to me isn't really in the mode of a tax effort question. It seems more akin to some school districts can offer French or Chinese or other programs that other school districts can't because of lack of teachers or lack of space to offer the programs, and that hasn't raised the court's equity concerns in the past. So I think from equity, we're probably okay with that.
I guess the reason I was asking it is because it's so specific for something that is such, as we look forward into appropriate ways to help at-risk students, that it's very much been identified as important in that realm. And I understand on the equity part, I mean, it's not about tax dollars. Anyway,
If you're looking
I
at-
worry too much about it, but I
If you're
think
looking at-
everybody should be able to have 4-year-old at risk if they need it. It's important, and so maybe we need to think of other clever ways to help that happen. I'll leave that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think if you're looking at it from an adequacy question, the more students you can help, the better. But if you can help some but can't get to others, I don't think there's a legal rationale to do nothing because you can help some and not help others. But certainly the more students you can help, the better.
Senator Petty?
I don't know if this is helpful or hindrance, but, so, districts have, some districts have used at-risk funds for their 4-year-old at-risk program, and they, in doing that, had to make decisions about, one, how they were going to use that funding, and two, the decision about how they were going to find space. So I think it kind of comes down to whether a district, one, has had the financial ability to be able to do it, but two, has made that a priority depending on their community that they are in. And, so I'll just use mine as an example, the district that I worked in, because before this legislation was passed, I think in 98, Anthony, that's all right, 97, 98, before this legislation was passed, that my school district decided that they would have at-risk preschool, and they funded it with at-risk money, and then the legislation was passed, and we were able to apply. So they made a decision, just like Senator King referred to, that was a priority. They don't have Chinese, but another district might, so.
Thank you.
Committee, any questions for any of the staff here? Nick, are you finished, or do you have something else?
I thought of one more thing, Mr. Chairman. One other substantive change that I feel like we need to point out in this bill is found on page 111 in section 98 of the bill. It's a change to the capital improvement state aid provision, or the bond and interest state aid. And in that, you'll see the change is actually on page 113. Any school districts that have an enrollment of less than 260 students in the school year immediately preceding the school year in which one of their bond elections is held, would not be entitled to receive state aid payments unless they receive prior approval from the state board before that election took place. And that would be going forward for bonds that were approved after July 1, 2017. So I just wanted to let the committee know about that last thing I thought.
Any questions? Any staff? Thank you, Nick. Committee, as Nick went through his his analysis. I think I caught everything that I can remember that we put in the Senate committee bill. I'm just looking over my list. I think we may have missed a discussion on military schools. They have that second count, and there's probably going to be some language about using a 3-year average and then a gross change on the second count rather than a net change. That's to smooth their situation out as they deploy and then come home. So we put that in there. I've got a question in the Senator's keen to see if we should put some sunset language in the bill to either sunset the entire formula or a portion of it to make our commitment that we're going to revisit, especially the programs dedicated to the at-risk underperforming students. So still working on that. Here's a very big piece. I'm just looking at a couple of my friends from Johnson County that work at the water department. There's a 50-50 chance that the Senate committee bill that comes over will have a funding mechanism in it, and it will be that utility fee that has been floated out, and it'll be a fixed fee to try to control the cost. We looked at sales tax. The sales tax was exempted, and if we would put that back on, then the sales tax would rise up when utilities raise their fees. So 50-50 chance that the Senate bill will have a funding mechanism that will be on utility fees, water, gas, and electric. And so that's again a chance that it's coming. And that was a big piece, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. I think that covers everything. Senator Hensley?
Mr. Chairman, was that $3 fee that's attached to residential utilities and $10 to commercial?
That was the original idea. What I tried to do was I wanted to limit it to 150 million fiscal note. So what that calculated out to is the $3 fee gets reduced to $2.25. The logic behind having a funding source other than SGF is as follows. Senator Hensley actually made this comment in the joint Republican-Democrat caucus. He was here when we did the formula in 92, 93. The formula was to raise the base aid quick enough that the LOB would decline at the same ratio and distinguish itself or extinguish itself. And obviously we know that LOB now is very much part of the formula and necessary. The Kansas SGF appears from all of my budget work that it cannot handle the stress of K-12 funding. That is to say, when you have a dip in recession, a decline in oil and gas, a decline in agriculture, everything comes apart at the seams. And we've lived with it. And I realize the tax policy is a discussion as well, but this is in addition to that calculation. So what I was trying to do is look for something very broad, and that is the broadest fee in Kansas. And to pile on that, if you look at two things. Number one, when oil went from $103 a barrel down to $27 a barrel, all the economists, including the very good ones in this building, did a calculation, and a lot of that should have rolled over to sales tax collections. It did not. And the reason why it did not is because there's disruption in the retail sales world of the world. Everything's going to internet services, and those are, for the most part, untaxed. So you can see it all over the country. There's 23 states that are in budgetary issues, and a lot of it's related to the third leg of the stool is disappearing because it's being untaxed. So you can take that logic of we're putting a tax back on utilities, but the savings of buying services and merchandise that we run at untaxed, one could probably make an argument that it's budget neutral in the world. I'm not going to do that unless I have to. The other thing that is very current, and it's the legends. And obviously, everybody knows the story that we saved the 42 million from going into another district, and it now gets pointed to the SGF. But even with that 42 million dropping in our fiscal year 17, our sales tax are actually lower today than they were last year. So you can just see the disruption that's happening in the retail world. $42 million nut drops into our SGF, and our sales tax actually is less than it was last year. You can just see how quickly it's eroding. So at this point in time, you can't buy utilities over the internet. It's the broadest fee, everybody will share in it, schools are important, and that was the logic. If it holds, I'm good with it. If the committee takes it out, then obviously I'll accept that as well. But it was the broadest fee that I could come up with. Senator Hensel.
So let me understand, you're saying that this utility fee will be incorporated into the Senate draft?
It will be, and the revisers are going to word it that the income will be directed directly to education through a special fee to make sure that we have the one subject rule and make sure it's appropriate.
Premised on that it's going to raise 150 million,
That's correct.
and so the residential fee would be $2.25. What under that scenario would be the commercial fee?
At $10.
$10. Thank you.
And then we know that industrial is cost of goods sold, so there will be, there's no sales tax on industrial, but they will be charged a $10 fixed fee. Senator Boyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, if we are going to have some type of funding structure in this bill, so it appears, could we have the appropriate person, I'm guessing from revenue services, come and discuss internet sales and why we're not collecting that, what we need to do, and how we can make that happen in the state, or something to that effect? Because I think that's a very important issue that this state is not addressing, and feeds into this idea of needing a fee rather than actually collecting taxes that we already have on the books.
Senator Boyer, we can bring them, they'll say that it's very difficult for them to measure it, but they will acknowledge that it's disappearing as far as the sales tax. What the Senate and the House has done, on the Senate side, it's Senate Bill 111, that's sitting below the line on OGO. I think the House is going to act first, but it's the piece of legislation that has any remote seller that sells into Kansas. At the end of the year, they have to send their client a statement very similar to a 1099 that says you bought $400 worth of merchandise from us, the remote seller, out-of-state seller, and we didn't charge you tax, and you should pay tax. So that's in Senate Bill 111, and I don't remember the House bill, but a lot of states are doing that. We're hoping that Quill, now that Orchard's been appointed to the Supreme Court, he has made it very public that he'll strike down Quill, and it'll start solving this issue. Our federal delegation can't get it done. They've been trying for years, and it's a tax increase, so they're stuck in neutral. So all the states are trying to fix it themselves, but of course, if we can get a lawsuit up to the Supreme Court, it's 100% sure that he'll strike down Quill, and it'll be rectified, but that could be years away. So we're trying to do things like I just explained in Senate Bill 111.
Is that going to, I'm sorry, is that going to move forward?
Yeah, the House has the same language, and I think the agreement with Stephen is they want to send it to us.
Okay, thank you.
We could send it to them.
Thank you.
Senator Petty?
So since you dropped that interesting little surprise on us, so are we going to have a presentation in from revenue concerning this issue?
Yeah, we have a lot of testimony to get done, virtual. Randy Watson needs to come back. I'm sure everybody needs to pass through the office and let us know what topics you need testimony on, so we can get the right people in here. Revenue will come in, Sean will come in on that revenue source. We'll take as much time as we need, and then if things fall into place and we're finished with our work, and we want to work Saturday so we can hit the ground Monday, totally fine with that. But it'll depend on us getting all of our testimony done in good fashion. But we do have a lot of work to do. And we're a good, solid 10 days behind where I thought we would be with this project. I thought we would have the House bill before we adjourn, and so we're playing massive catch-up. Senator Petty.
I'm just going to ask you another question. So I know that you have brought forward with this now Senate bill, which doesn't have a number yet, does it?
It does not. It made by 5 o'clock.
Okay, so the Senate bill, some changes from 2410. So I'm just going to be very bold here and ask, are there some other changes that you would consider? Because having looked over the bill before it's actually completed today, that we might recommend?
Certainly, if they're not too time consuming, we can get it done. I'd like to get the bill by 5, but certainly if you have something that we can get in there, just let me know.
Do you want me to let you know now?
Oh, that's your call if you want.
I'll be glad to let you know.
Absolutely.
So in the bill, there's the section dealing with the scholarship program. And I've tried to chase this down and ask a number of people. There is, in that list of items for the scholarship program, it does grandfather in schools that were already in the program. It seems that if we're grandfathering in, it should be, we talked about grandfathering, it should be sooner than later. And so the date that's in there right now is July 1 of 2018, which means more schools could be grandfathered than are already in there. So my recommendation is that number should be July 1 of 2017 for grandfathering in these schools to not meet the qualifications of being accredited.
Sure. Again, with the House being 2018, the Senate being 2017, I'd be happy to make that change because it'll be comprehensible, and if we have to move it to 18 to get a vote, we will. So just be prepared for that. But if you want to change it, we can make that. I'm sure we can make that change today.
Okay, and there's just one other thing in that same area, then adding that those schools that are grandfathered in would have to become accredited within 3 to 5 years.
I want to talk to Randy about that. You know, that's a very delicate piece. I don't want to fuss with it too much, but we can talk to Randy. You can certainly get an amendment for that, but I don't want to make a commitment to change that.
So on the first one that I mentioned, you need this in some other form than I telling you right now, or?
I'm fixing to tell him right at the end of this meeting.
I'll stop there.
Anything else before we finish up our work? So tomorrow we'll come back at 1:30. We'll get the testimony going. Hopefully we'll have a bill. And if we don't, we'll continue to work in this fashion. And we'll try, we're supposed to stop at 3, but our floor work will be done and we can continue on if things look like we can make some good progress. I think, is everybody willing to do that? Or long and hard? Okay.
Right, thank you.
Conceptual fix.